Oh, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our sort of ongoing PM training sort of calendars that we've been working on. Just a quick reminder for those who've just joined us, if you have your microphone on, can you please mute yourself? That would be great. Today we've got Hamish Turner with us today for an interview. Welcome, Hamish.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks for joining us. Many of you will be familiar with Hamish. You have seen him at our previous PM Recharge events. You've seen him at various conferences. We've done training together before. I hope you know, Hamish, I've been referring to you in our promotions as New Zealand's preeminent rent roll broker.
Preeminent? No.
Yeah.
Let's write that down, steal it if that's right. Preeminent.
So, but no, you've definitely got a lot of experience, mate, and that's why I wanted to kind of get you on board with everyone today. You know, you've got over sort of 20 years experience in property management in different areas. You obviously look at rent roll sales, acquisitions, you do business audits, you help property management businesses with growth programs as well. So do you want to sort of give us a little bit of an update or background for those who might not be familiar with you as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Zach, for the intro. I think you've sort of covered it really well. So I do rent roll sales and acquisitions. It's my main or my primary, and I'm doing more sales and acquisitions than anyone in the country on rent rolls, and that's been the case for a few years now. We also provide business audits, or health checks is what we like to call them, valuations. We partner with a business valuing firm because it's a bit of a conflict for us to do them, but we have a partner firm that does them, and then we did the growth membership. So I've owned and operated my own businesses. I had a franchise business in multiple locations. I've worked across Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand born, but I've spent probably 20 years in either camp, and that's why you'll hear my twang, because I'm usually back there for business quite a bit. And yeah, so I guess I've come through from being a rental clerk all the way through into management, and then ownership and franchising, and then into the consulting and broking. And the broking is the real area that I love doing it. Love completing work with owners, and yeah, real numbers and systems and processes guy. So I'm not your typical salesperson, but I think that rent rolls are systems and processes in terms of transitions. So, but anyway, that's a bit about me. I'll stop talking about myself. So.
Awesome, Hamish. And look, we won't hold the Aussie twang against you in any way, shape, or form. But just to clarify too, for those watching, in terms of the valuation side of what you do as well, if anyone here is interested in the valuation of their rent roll, obviously if you're a business owner listening, you've got different methods there. You can do the full-blown method, but even if you're just curious and you want to get an insight, particularly in, you know, the climate we're in at the moment, where I think probably all of us are taking a little bit of stock as to where we sit financially. You know, you do a light sort of valuation version as well. So we'll have Hamish's details at the end of this. Actually, even if you just want to flip people your email address now, Hamish, so they can take that down if they want to inquire about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just put that on the little chat, which is Hamish Turner, and I'll put the website here too. On the website, we've actually got a calculator for you to calculate your rent rolls, but I have a table of multipliers. It's a pretty simple process to do a basic sort of range, and I'm quite happy to shoot a how to do on that. I've got a standard how to do with the current multiplier range table, because I get asked this a lot, and I'm pretty liberal with the information, because I think as an industry, if we know how to value from principle, then it's good, you know, upskilling and understanding. I've met principals before that have run sales-only businesses for 30 years, and then discovered how rent rolls are valued, and really kicked themselves for the next couple of years. So, yeah, right. There you go.
Great, Hamish. And look, everyone, also too, I work quite closely with Hamish, and he is there to help talk to any of you if you are curious about issues pertaining to the value of your business or anything we talk about today. I know you're always happy to talk to our guys, so thank you for that. And again, thank you for coming today. You know, the goal for me today was we're all sort of in, I'm so sick of saying this, but we're all in an unusual climate, and I have been getting quite a few questions from the network in terms of, you know, will this impact the value of my rent roll? Will this impact the ability for me to sell it as an asset in the future? Or just how this might be sort of changing the value sort of component of everything. And I thought no better person to help us clarify what the situation is at the moment, what's happening than the man himself. And also too, I just wanted to have everyone kind of have an understanding, obviously, on the factors that might impact outside of anything COVID-19 related, just to get a greater understanding on the the impacts of those specific components that will affect the value of your rent roll. So even as a team, you can create a stronger business that will help you probably develop some more specific KPIs or goal setting that will actually help align to business growth. So just a bit of information there. And then for anyone here watching as well, I will be doing a live Q&A with Hamish at the end. We've had a couple of questions already come through, which we will cover off. So if you have any specific questions for Hamish today, just text me through. I've got my phone number here, our phone on me, and we'll read through those at the end. But yeah, first of all, Hamish, how are you, mate? How you going with everything at the moment?
I'm okay. I think it's more. It's actually been a good period for me to knuckle down on working on the back end of the business and get some projects done, because initially things did go quiet pretty much overnight, and that would have been the case for a lot of people tuning in today. So I pivoted. That word I've heard a few times now. I've got to come up with something else, but I did alter the business in terms of the online coaching that we do, and there were some other things that have been on the to-do list for a while. Which basically took precedence initially, and then I had a few offers that went unconditional during the middle of the COVID, so let's call it April. But they were hard. And it wasn't hard from the purchasers or vendors' point of view. It was hard from the banks. They really got backlogged. So one of the deals I had going through, which was a scale acquisition, was close to 2 mil, and that 4 finance extensions, which in a normal state of play, had it happened 8 weeks prior to that, I don't think we would have had 4 extensions. We would have had maybe 1 to 2. It's been an interesting period. And each time the government changes, like when the levels changed. So the week prior to, I'll back the truck up. The week prior to COVID hitting, I had several million under contract that fell over, that were under offer that were being negotiated that just fell over. And then the week after, 1st of April, I had 5 settlements occur, and not one set of keys changed hands. And I was pretty impressed with that, because property management is they just tend to get on with stuff. But I was really impressed with the fact that 5 businesses that were under contract, gone unconditional, had a 1st of April settlement, and you've got all the different things going on with lawyers, accountants having to move home, and then change of keys and what have you. Everyone just got on with it, and those 5 all settled. So I was head off to those buyers, and then I had a couple that have gone unconditional during COVID that have been it's been like pulling teeth, really, mainly because of the banks. It's not because of the buyers or purchasers, but just the delays there. So everything's starting down now. So
good segue into our next sort of first question that I just want to clarify and I want to get out there for everyone straight away is, are rent rolls still a saleable asset? Are they still worth investing in? Are they still selling? Obviously, you've alluded to what's been happening, but what's your honest thoughts and all? No bullshit. Are they still a good asset? What are we looking at?
Yeah, well, yes. The answer is yes. If you look at them, I don't know where we'd rank on if you're looking to acquire businesses, where we'd be ranked in terms of cash flow and robustness and what have you. But really, property management's held up extremely well in the last week period. There has been, and there continues to be, a bit of a cloud on potential rental arrears, and of course vacancy if you can't get into stock and show it. But outside that, I mean, the majority of my books that I've got for sale, I've got about 17 listings at the moment. The majority of them have actually improved in terms of size and arrears levels since lockdown started, because the principals have been really focused on those books. They haven't been able to do a lot, so they've been heavily involved with them. But really, there's been a lot of hype around arrears, but the actual impact has been minimal. That's still an unknown how that's going to look in 90 days' time, let's say. I've certainly had a strong increase I've had a general decrease in interest because people are sitting on their hands waiting to see what happens. But there has been an increase in demand from sales principals with small books or that are wanting to increase their book size for cash flow and also profitability. So yeah, there's still a market there. I mean, it's pretty hot off the press. I'm buzzing at the moment because I had multiple close to 2 digits offers on one particular book in the last 48 hours that I sort of multi-offer, so I closed. But so there's activity there, and at good sound levels. So, yeah.
So for business owners in a position now where they might be considering, growing their rent roll through acquisition, in all honesty, do you think that's still a relatively safe bet, as in, they're not going to be losing out on their investment? There's still going to be plenty of future demand. These are still hot commodities.
Yeah, I mean, it's held up really, the books have held up really strong in the face of COVID-19. If you've got a sales where income's really dried up significantly, PM has continued on. So if you're looking to buy a book to stimulate cash flow, share office cost, or to increase your book size, to increase profitability, every way you look at it, the only ones with a cloud on it right now is or with a question mark is the arrears. Is the arrears going to increase? And that's off the back end of businesses closing, like a percentage of increase of business closing and employment changing. But the reality is I think the figure's about 80,000 expats coming back into the country. I mean, they need someone to live and rent and buy. So there'll be certain areas or pockets that really will see increases. In sort of demand, so vacancy, I don't think will be affected. In arrears, there'll be a reshuffling. We'll
look at arrears sort of in a little bit, because we've got some. I noticed you had some good ideas when we were talking yesterday in terms of, risk assessment for those arrears. So we'll come to that shortly. But I think just for a very brief overview, because I know for many on the call now, they are familiar with how rent rolls are valued, but just very briefly in sort of short terms, can you just quick overview again, factors of value, how a rent roll's value, what's going to affect the value of the rent roll?
Yeah, sure. There's 5 primary and 9 secondary fields when valuing a book. The most common way of valuing a book, I should say, and then applied by a multiplier range. I've got an email that I can send out afterwards with current multipliers. The 5 primaries are in establishing a range, the average rent, average management fee, number of properties, and then past sales in that location, and then you sort of slip down to the secondaries, which are things that are things like vacancy, rate, if it's at 5% or lower, arrears is at 5% or lower. You've got to say in owner to property ratios. So not much has changed there. If anybody uses Palace on this network, which a number of you will be, there's a report called Portfolio Summary, and that actually captures, there's a 1-pager that's generated after in a month, and that captures a lot of the fields in valuing a book in that one report. So it's very helpful for a principal to keep a close eye on that from month to month. So, but I think the other key factors, do I see them changing, like the values changing? I guess the value is sort of that I've got doing work is there's an unknown factor around arrears, and we are in a pandemic. I don't like using that word much, but but we are in a very strong industry. So what I think will happen short term is there'll be a bit of a decline away in values, but it'll be short term, and that'll be around the unknowns. But the valuer that we've got is not actually making any changes to multipliers at the moment. They're making an adjustment, and you've got to understand the valuation is different to brokering something. So you got the valuation, and you got your market demand. So in some areas, I've had market demand increase from sales principals that are wanting rent rolls, and some of them are starting to move, whereas others, more scale, larger or average size books are sort of not getting the same interest level. The smaller books are moving nicely. So I think that it's answered your question a bit, but if you...
No, it's sort of it's sort of there. I think it's just something good to touch on though, in terms of, again, a lot of people listening now are relatively familiar with the fact that you have a multiplier that's basically placed on your income. The multiplier times by your annual income gives you some sort of value of what the business would be.
Yep.
And what actually changes the multiplier are those key KPIs that sometimes our staff are kind of wondering, well, why we push to minimize vacancy periods and do all this kind of stuff, because ultimately that's the kind of thing that's going to affect the value of your business. And I think one thing I want to raise obviously is just the management fees, because that will have a huge impact on what that management is worth and what your role is worth.
Yeah.
And I know I was talking to Russ down in Raglan, and he's noticed one of his competitors has come out through this sort of pandemic with this new bargain basement rate. There will be some companies, particularly some of the smaller ones, who are hurting with what's been happening, and they're going to be coming out with your 5% to 6% management fees just to get business. And I want to stress and implore people not to feel like you have to match them and it's this giant race to the bottom just to get the business. If you're in a position where people are looking to make offers to get business, I think it should be any other way other than touching the management fee, whether that's, you give away your free routine inspections, or perhaps it's the Healthy Homes compliance statement, or you're actually paying for something else as an add-on to bring the business, rather than just kind of dropping your pants and dropping the management fee. Because I think a lot of people see that as the easy way to sign up a management, but it actually creates a lower value asset.
Yep, yeah, spot on. So some of the primary fields average rent, average management fee. So you put it across a projected 52-week period. That's your base to work on applying a multiplier to. So some of the really good, and I've seen it within your network, Zach. Some of the good ways of achieving and being competitive, and then providing is having an option A and option B, like a default B, rather than discounting or doing free management fees as an intro, or free landlord insurance like a promotion, but anything but dropping that management fee, which has a direct impact on your capital value. Yeah.
And that's why I like you've referenced that, because that's why I like to really promote the idea of that gold, silver, bronze package, where if there's one takeaway from today out of anything, if you're an office listening where you do just have one set management fee, please investigate implementing your gold, silver, bronze, because every office in our network who does that will typically see an owner pick your middle package, which is a higher management fee where you've included a few other costs. But every landlord you get on who picks the higher management fee is increasing the value of your asset. So if you're doing a one set fee management, please, I implore you to look at the gold, silver, bronze package options, which we can help with, because they do work, they increase the asset of your business, and it gives owners a choice as well, which I really like.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to talk about, so you've mentioned with COVID-19, I'm getting the vibe from you that in general terms, this hasn't hugely impacted on the value of our rent roll, other than potentially some of these future risks that we might have with this nasty tail we're going to see in terms of tenants losing or spending up the government wage subsidy that they've had. Tenants losing jobs potentially that they might not have lost just yet. There is going to be a sting to this arrears tail and vacancy periods and things like that. So as long as we keep a close eye on those as best we can, that will help. But what are you seeing? You mentioned financing issues and things before. What are you seeing in terms of any impact on the buyer pool out there for rent rolls, or their ability to purchase, or what are you seeing in that regard?
Yeah, well, the banks are tightening up big time, and it's changing so quickly. But in terms of serviceability of borrowing, it's getting really, really tough. And I think that we'll see several changes. It's not feasible in terms of the economy moving for the banks to stay so tight. But I think the way I'm handling it is positioning my vendors for more flexibility around payment terms.
Yep.
So typically, if we look at an average sale, the broad line, sort of 10% deposit down, 70% paid at settlement, 20% held for a retention of 90 days. So positioning vendors for flexibility around some. I'm not typically a big advocate of vendor financing, but portion vendor financing if you've got a good buyer, or delayed payment over a period of time, i.e. 12 months, and sort of leaving the purchase price alone. Because the reality is that the rent rolls have stood up really well. There's been a drop away in some secondary income. So in the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks, or 6 weeks, I should say, that's routine inspections and maintenance processing fees. But outside that, it's been pretty much tickety-boo.
Just touch on something I want to quickly check, because I find that quite interesting. You sort of piqued an instant question there for me.
Yeah.
So what you're sort of saying is that if we are looking, or if business owners are looking to sell, it's probably reasonable that they should be expecting to, if they want a sale to go ahead, be a bit more flexible in the terms of receiving that payment from the purchaser.
Yep.
You mentioned there, potential deferred payments over sort of 12 months. If, or as an example, if someone sold their rent roll and did offer that to a purchaser in terms of, paying 20% now, 20% in 3 months, and ongoing until we're paid up in full, does that have any impact on the retention period? I know, when we have, there's always that money that's held back from a purchase, and then they reassess it after, say, 3 months to see how many managements were lost. Does that extended payment plan have any impact on the retention period, or can the two be very separate? So the retention period
is quite separate at the moment. So retention period is just treated completely separately, but the payment terms, and I don't like to mix the two. Certainly retention periods I like to have as short as possible, which most vendors do too. So,
and it's good to hear too, because I was just worried about the risk there, I guess, of let's say poor quality operator purchasing your rent roll, and then in 10 months' time, before they make their final payment to you, going, well, I've lost another 50 and I'm going to hold back. So as long as that's all very separate, which I'm sure it would be in the contract and everything.
Yeah, it's a good question.
One thing I want to sort of talk about, we've touched obviously on the arrears and some of these kind of components that might be coming, but I noticed on your sort of website with one of your affiliates there, and potentially what you might be talking about on sort of training I know you're doing next week, which we'll talk about for everyone soon as well, is looking at an internal risk assessment.
Yep.
Can you tell us about officers now who are listening, talk us through that internal risk assessment and what you would recommend for them?
Yeah, so risk assessing tenants in terms of where their jobs lie, if they're government employees, WINS beneficiaries, in the tourism or hospitality sector, which I'd class as higher risk, and looking at the multiple tenants and the income flow into that property. Is what I'm looking at. The second part to that, which is not on the assessment but certainly worth looking at as a principal sales officers, is the owner and how they leverage with their property and their impact. Let's say you've got an owner couple that own a hospitality business, and they have 2 rental properties. They're at high risk to selling. So there's the other side of it as well. In terms of touching the owners, seeing where they're at, if they need any support, if they're looking to sell, and just getting those early conversations going in terms of retention. But in terms of the tenant, and there's the risk assessment online, which we can shoot around, or it's easily obtainable from the website, to basically categorise the tenants and work out. And the reality is, and when you look at that, we did a survey on this, something like about 11.5% of tenants are in high risk categories across the board. It's quite low. It's there's been a lot of hype and a lot of feed on the media around this about rent, and there's been some misinformation and what have you. But the reality is that it's been and to get focused with that analysis and being proactive with that 11, or let's call it 15% for argument's sake, in terms of rebates or whatever is required to mitigate, being more proactive opposed to reactive and seeing being proactive actually creates confidence with your team too about what's going on. So that's probably a bigger part. So.
Yeah, and look, I think it's something I sort of talk to a lot of our officers at the moment, trying to find the positives out of the situation. And one of them, which I'm so thankful for, because I really genuinely don't believe our industry has ever been in a position where we've had such strong relationships with our tenants and our landlords. We've been forced to pick up the phone. We've been forced to, irrespective of how we may have previously operated as property managers, and I see it with some of the complaints and things we get through, but putting the past behind us, we've been forced to stand alongside everyone. We're all shoulder to shoulder. We're all in the same boat. And I just don't want to see anyone, miss the opportunity you've created here. And then with this whole idea of a risk assessment, I think for everyone with your property managers, one thing I'd be recommending you all do is your property manager should individually have, a bit of a spreadsheet which you can create very easily of all their properties in the portfolio. They have those relationships, so they can identify, like you said, Hamish, high-risk tenants who might be, the airline steward with Air New Zealand, or might be, the waiter at the restaurant, or whatever it is. So you can actually pick out those tenants and start talking to them and addressing an issue with your landlord first.
Yeah.
Again, it helps strengthen that relationship. And I like what you said too with the landlords, and just even potentially considering what high-risk landlords you might have, because as we move forward, if we start getting issues with more tenant arrears, or even landlords who are starting to feel the pain financially as well, we may end up in situations with landlords withdrawing their management from us simply because they think that's the easiest way to save, $100 a month, whatever it might be. Whereas I think the more proactive you can be to assess the risk of your tenants, go, hey, Hamish, I've assessed the risk. I feel like your tenant could be something there that might be an issue. We haven't heard anything. I'm just letting you know, look, if this does happen, we'll work with you on whatever we can do to help. And the specific example I give is one of our officers have created a template for their landlords where even the landlords get a management fee holiday. So rather than a landlord not telling us the truth and ending their management simply to save some money, if we're more proactive about it and we can say, hey, look, we're going to give you a management fee holiday for 2 months or 3 months or whatever to get through it, at least you still hold on to the actual asset and it comes back later.
That's right. And that's not something you need to offer until at a point that, that they're sort of pulling on the sword in terms of needing to terminate because I'm looking for areas. And then you've got that discretion to, a one by one, because it's not something you want to blanket, but certainly an option is great to retain the capital value of that property. And if they've been a good long-term client as well, too. Yeah, but I do like your point there about engaging. It's a massive opportunity to engage with clients right now, picking up the phone, doing some of this old school, I'll call it, communication, which has huge benefit over projected future relationship and retention of that client for both the management and the sale ultimately. So.
But it's that idea of being this whole risk assessment, because ultimately, the point of today is talking about how can we hold your values of your business strong, and if anything, try and increase what your asset is worth. And one thing I want to push again is this proactiveness, where if you're doing a risk assessment with your tenants and then your landlords, like I'd love to see more of our officers actually go out there on their own bat and talk to Ministry of Social Development, talk to WINS and say, hey, look, if I have tenants or landlords in trouble, what support do you have available? What kind of grants can they get? What are the amounts? How do they apply? What paperwork do they need? So that, again, if you talk to Hamish and Hamish is my tenant and you're saying, mate, I'm not too sure what's happening with my job, you already have the information there, because currently, maybe, hey, look, maybe even I failed in that area and not providing enough of that information to the network. But it's something I would like to see more, where once a tenant comes to us and says they're having issues, if you can go, well, look, you can get a $1,500 grant from Ministry of Social Development. If you take this arrears ledger through to WINS, you can get $400 for living costs. If we know specifically what is there, I think a lot more of our tenants will go out and apply for it and get it. Because at the moment, we just say contact WINS, contact Ministry of Social Development. And they kind of go, oh, it's kind of too hard basket, I won't bother. But if we can give them the specific of what they've got available, it might help them. Yeah,
I totally agree. We've got some free resources and links there for property managers to use in our site. I know, Zach, I don't think you've missed anything, or if you have, it's been very little. That the general feedback, it's been a funny one. I've had feedback from other general managers of different groups that have asked me, well, what's that Zach Snelling doing? So I think you've been at the forefront of it, and it's hard because it's so quick. The changes have been so quick and varied, and you've not only got to be dealing with what's going on with your business, but you've got home life, other family. And it's just a changing landscape. But we've got a lot of resources. We've spent a lot of time and effort creating templates and checklists and links to different things for tenants and property managers to use to communicate with their tenant and owner client bases in terms of both the owners and the tenants. But huge opportunity to and if there's something there or you're not sure about, just shoot us through an email. And we'll send you a link. What was coming through my head, and it's not on that free resources. I've got an actual snapshot of businesses in the order in which they're affected in terms of the industry, which was something that was pretty cool. That was I don't think we have it on there because it's open to change. I don't have it on the site, but something that I got a little while ago. I thought, great, that sort of ranks your tenants from in terms of their industry category 1 through to 60 odd, I think it was, in terms of where I should be really focused and understanding where they sit in that risk assessment. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to sort of have this chat with you because I was thinking, I wanted to reassure people, obviously, that values are still holding strong, demand is still strong, but kind of highlight, what are the areas that you as a business need to focus on, and delve down to your staff in terms of their KPIs. And just this discussion with you now, I've just wrote a note for Friday's update. I will be drilling deeper into more specific, detailed arrears support for tenants, where we actually take that extra step, because this has a direct link to the value of your business. So any advice though, we're going to sort of move through to some Q&A shortly, but any advice from you around, what do our businesses, key things they need to be doing or focusing on right now to keep the value strong, look after themselves?
The two biggies in my head are the tenant risk analysis and the communication with the owners. And both those two things are proactive. They speak to retention, and they speak to commission flow on sales ultimately. But they're the areas that and providing, number 3 is providing good factual meaty information. I talk to my guys all the time when they're putting stuff online. It's got to be meaty, it's got to be factual, and it's got to be positive. If it doesn't fit those 3 categories, don't put it out there. And it's the same here. Don't come at it with pessimistic communication. Sales principles by their nature don't do that. But it's really important to be thinking that way, because we are in an industry that's been in large unaffected. I've got a book for sale in Rotorua right now that was at approximately 300 managements pre-COVID, and it has increased by 10% in the size of the book, because a lot of Airbnb have turned into fixed-term managements, and their arrears has actually decreased. Wow. Now, pre-COVID or early days, if I just pick any one of the ones that I've got listed, if I was to look at anyone that was potentially in that high risk, that probably would have been it being a tourism location. But the reality of that is that, so I didn't share with or but if I'd shared with my own personal opinion of what could have occurred pre-COVID with that owner or potential purchases, that would have been inaccurate. It wasn't factual. So we are going through a change right now. There's no specifics on how it's going to look, but the short-term overview or summary of where we're at and how the impact has been on property management has been minimal, very, very minimal. So if anything, it's been positive to see. And I think you touched on it right at the start. People have become a lot more humble and empathetic and easier. It's been really nice to actually see in some respects, and I'm not a fluffy person, but it's been really, really nice to see that side of things come through, the personal side of business sort of come through, and picking up the phone and helping, and it's been good actually. So.
And it's really good to get that reassurance from you and for everyone here that we haven't been, touch wood, so far largely affected, and I don't believe we will be as long as we keep pushing those arrears, the vacancy periods, trying to do everything we can to leverage this new Airbnb activity, which you've obviously seen already happening. And I know I've got a meeting tomorrow for those listening with a few people across New Zealand where we're sort of starting now on all of our project work. So getting out of crisis management and now moving into, okay, let's grab this by the horns and really start making the most of it, which is good. And it leads us again into the next sort of point there, Hamish, which I want to sort of do a little plug for you, because I know you've got a training session coming up next week designed around growth for property managers. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how people will register, what they'll get by joining in?
Yeah, there's a free webinar next week, just to sort of, but it's sort of one of my, I suppose, strong areas. I've set up multiple businesses from scratch, so I like organic growth. I'm very systems and process driven, so the way I tend to grow is not around staff. It's about harnessing systems and processes and having them live on long term past any changes with staff. I've got David Turnout, who was a franchisee of mine for years and does all the business audits and has won some business development awards with the previous company, quite a few actually. So he's on there, and we've got a business coach as well. So there's three of us that are involved with that. But yeah, it's a growth membership. So we've sort of pivoted we had some 30 odd clients that were coaching and flying in and doing regular coaches. We've pivoted that to I suppose a growth membership clinic, and we've got a free membership. We've got in excess of 200 registered attendees next week. So there's been a lot of behind the scenes sort of work, getting that in order, and sort of having a schedule for the rest of the year. But it's just not only the webinars, but then unlimited access to David and some 4,000 odd pages worth of persistence and procedures. I know you've got some pretty gutsy stuff yourself, Zach. So I don't want to sort of cross-pollinate. Yeah, but
I'm always happy for officers to look at other sort of sources of value and asset there.
Yeah.
And so with this webinar for next week, what day, what time, how do people register?
Oh yeah, so 13th of May at 11 a.m. I will grab the delegate list from you today, if that's all right, and I'll shoot the link around. Is that all right?
What I might think is that it's sort of tricky. It kind of chops and changes as people come in and out. So what I might actually do, even better still, is I'll just post this up on our Facebook page.
Okay, cool.
So that'll go out to everyone who's not even on the call today as well. So if you send me through that link, I'll put it out to everyone. Now, and that leads us to time for a couple of questions. So I've had a few come through here, which I'll read out for you, Hamish. And again, if anyone has any questions for Hamish specifically, just send me through a text now. The first one here is in regards to letting fees, Hamish. I've had the question: is there any data to show what the effect of banning the letting fee payments by the tenant has had on property management businesses? This particular business owner has had the majority of landlords now move to paying them the letting fee, which is the case in sort of almost all of our offices. In the financial year 1920, letting income was up on the year previous. Doesn't seem to have had a huge impact. When the new law came into effect, I recall most people thinking it would be, affect things negatively. Is there anything, a trend you've seen across the industry in terms of letting fees and what impact that has had since the law changed?
I liken it to the fear around arrears on COVID. There was a lot of fear from a lot of clients that I had, but the impact was minimal to nothing. And of the clients that I see across the country, approximately 90% have implemented either a week's letting fee that landlords pay, or a set fee. About 80% have gone, just flicked the 1 week on to the owner. 10% have approximately 10% have flicked on to 1 week, a set fee or a monthly fee in some cases. but the impact's been minimal. There's about 10%, roughly or approximately, that have not made any changes because there's still some fear around it. But the reality is it's been minimal, and it's actually better from a tenant's perspective, because they're not, if you've got a certain percentage of tenants that won't go and deal with agents because they don't want to pay a letting fee opposed to dealing with a private owner. We've now got that pool. I worked in Australia for 10 years before I've been back here for 10 years, but I could never work out as a principal. It just used to do my head in. I couldn't understand why the tenants would pay a letting fee, because I'm missing out on a window of cream, smart tenants that don't want to be paying additional fees if they don't have to. So yeah.
You've made a good point there too for everyone. Sort of roughly 10% still haven't done anything because they've been a bit too fearful. I sort of, again, so that, I mean, in rough terms, that would equate to probably 10 property management businesses in Ray-White, New Zealand, who might still be sitting on their hands, hadn't moved any fees over. If you're one of those businesses listening who still aren't charging your landlords this fee or haven't put something in place, please do so, because it's almost a standard thing now that landlords expect. They're happy to pay, and basically you're just losing out on some easy income there, which many, as Hamish is attested to, everyone seems to be getting quite easily.
Yeah. You could start, the way you could start to it, if you've got fear around it, is just to focus on your A-class clients that aren't going to have an issue with it, and just categorising your A, B, Cs. That's what I've done with fee increases with clients over many years, is reintroducing, and certainly all your new listing agreements should be have that accompanied with your class, your A class owners. And then what happens is you get confidence around. The biggest blockages is confidence. It's not actually implementing it. It's confidence around what will happen. If you do that with your A class and your new clients coming on, you'll gain confidence, and you roll out to your B class properties, and then you might have your owners that are C. That, and you can always have that discretion where you charge a bit less if you've got an owner with half a dozen properties. Yeah. Okay, well, the letting fee is going to be 50%, but by then you've broken the back of it. So yeah.
And this is good too, because it leads us into the next sort of question that we've had come through too, in terms of sort of letting fee income and how that might impact on the value of the business.
Yeah.
So the question here is sort of, up until the letting fee change, some valuations excluded the value of management and casual letting fees, while some seem to include letting fees in this. Can you get Hamish to please shed some light on this part of the calculation, since the majority of managed landlords are now paying the letting fee? Casual landlords are also paying. So I guess in summation, what's the impact on the value of this letting fee income stream?
Yeah, good question. There's a bit of a myth out there that letting fees make or secondary, what I call secondary fees. So you've got primary fee being management fee, which is approximately 80% of your book's income generated. Letting fees are between 10 and 15% on average. Now, when you annualise your management fees and put it across the multiplier, the main way rent rolls are valued, letting fees actually aren't in the primary category. So let's say we come up with a range of 2.4 to 2.6 times, or 2.6 times, right? Letting fees don't actually factor in that range at all. They're one of the 9 categories. Secondary income are one of the 9 categories that factor whereabouts in that range. So you still got arrears, vacancy, and what have you. So secondary fees typically 20% all up. So that might be a range of different things. The main one is letting fees, routine inspections, maintenance, processing, and what have you. But the reality is the only, I would see a detraction, and have seen a detraction. I've had a couple of books during the letting fee process or change process that didn't implement fees, and that went against them in terms of the value. So whereas at 2.4 to 2.6, it was a really, really good book, and if they had letting fees and other things, I'd see it at that 2.6 level. No letting fees, I'd see it back here at that 2.4. So it does,
Well, it certainly does have an impact too, because you touched on that in your answer there as well, where whilst the letting fee component of the value of your business might relate to, say, 20% or one of the 20% of those sort of secondary factors, if you're purchasing a rent roll, you want to see some letting fee income. And no matter what the value you've said it is, if I can see every year there's X $100,000 letting fee income, that makes me so much more likely to pony up the cash to pay for it. So I think it does have an impact, doesn't it?
does have a pack in terms of the leveraging, yes, because the vendor of a book that's for sale is typically freehold on that book or has a loan, but it's for the minority, whereas the purchaser is typically lending the majority. So they need to see more fat coming through. They need profit for the number to make them work, even though they don't typically factor in the primary range. Certainly, yeah, there's got to be enough fat on it coming through. And when you get into larger books, that letting fee income is a biggie, or the secondary income is a biggie in terms of the numbers working for finance to be approved. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's definitely an area, again, I think if it's not a focus for your office to, monitor that income, review the income to ensure that people are paying what they should, it's certainly something you should be sort of having on the list there. We've had a great question come through here. Hamish, looks like we've got a fan of yours. Hey, Zach, great webinar. Thanks to Hamish. I've got a question here for Hamish Skinny Turner. When is the optimum time to be cleaning up and improving the value of a book ahead of marketing? And is this something that your company can assist with?
Okay, that's something we can assist with through doing a business audit or a health check. The ideal time to do that is really on an annual basis, and then getting your staff to sort of have rolled out projects over winter where things go a bit quieter with vacancies. So you still got routine inspections and what have you, but to really to do some housekeeping or spring keeping or whatever you want to call it during quieter seasonal transition periods. And Christmas is a bit quieter. I call it the dead zone for selling or for vacant stock typically, but it's a hard time to be working on projects. But winter is a great time to be doing. I like the best. I'll answer that a bit better. The best time to do a health check is really post end of financial year, which is around now, because you get to the health checks we do, they're comprehensive. They're about 30 pages long, and they go into every part of the business and they establish any gaps. And it might be looking at your management agreement, it'd be looking at your fees, it'd be looking at how your staff are paid. Have you got restrainer trains with your staff? Do you have, and it goes through and finds all the primary gaps for then you make it. But when people are ready to sell, they're ready to sell, right? That's my experience for the majority. But if they can actually have, because when we sell a business, we do an audit or a business audit to establish the gaps, but it's actually not ideal to do it then. It's actually ideal to do it 6 to 9 months out as a minimum, so that can be worked on and it can be reflected in the information memorandum and the business being sold. And you have a good 12 months financials that look and have it humming or running at a really good level. Yeah.
Well, I like the idea too, Hamish, of as opposed to sort of at what point do we start cleaning everything up so we can sell a nice asset? Rather than that kind of thought process, I'd like it if we all employed. Look, I know it's very easy for me to say this and not have to do the work and get the staff to get on board behind it, but a simple thing where potentially if anyone here is listening and they want that, you can email this to Hamish, but your list of the primary factors and the secondary factors of value, you can list them all up in a spreadsheet, and those are your KPIs.
That's right. Yep.
Every single factor of value should be something that is monitored. You made the comment before, and I've seen it in various acquisitions we've had in our network, where if the paperwork is messy, if you've got all sorts of agreements all over the place, that will impact on the value. So that should be a KPI.
Yeah.
If you've got arrears in your portfolio that, irrespective of COVID-19 are high, or it's not something that you really, employ your team to monitor, and actually even, just talking out loud here, but, even a monetary bonus for property management staff who achieve an arrears rate of less than 1% for the month or something like that. These sorts of ideas, if you just align all of your goals to the value factors, you will have a tidy business that doesn't need a lot of work when you go to sell.
Yep. I agree. And I think if anybody's wanting a health check or a business audit, we've got a draft copy I can shoot. You can see what sort of stuff we look at doing. It's pretty comprehensive. It takes around 8 to 10 hours for us to compile that report, and there's a lot of benchmarking there done. But one thing that's running through my head to share there is that a lot of the frustration with principals along the way of growing a book is that it's not making enough money, or the frustration around there is an inherent need to restructure a business as it grows to continue the growth. You wear a lot of hats when you first start, and let's say as a principal you start, you're doing leasing, managing, new biz and administration, your 4 core areas, and then what happens over time is you end up wearing fewer and fewer hats until you have a team that each wear one of those hats, and that's how you continue to get your growth. Now, those business audits really highlight there's a lot of recommendations around restructuring the right kind of way to pay team members to harness growth. So there's a lot more that comes out of the health check than just looking at what needs to be tidied up. It's also assists with growth. So yeah.
Yeah, and look, I like that point. It's a good point for us to sort of close things up on a little bit. Where look, we can all run some better businesses. You know, at the end of the day, you get the old saying, you've got to spend money to make money. And it's interesting. We had an interview with Natalie Wendell last week. One of her biggest sources of growth for new business comes from referrals. And the main reason she gets referrals is because she has a really, really heavy admin team. So she's got more admin people than what most people on this call right now would have. She invests that money there, and that directly leads to growth. And I quite often see that in our network, where sometimes we're a little bit scared to spend money, which I understand, particularly in these sorts of climates. You know, but it will lead to more money, and often we hamper the growth of our business simply because we don't want to pony up for that next staff member.
Yep.
But no, look, and talk to Hamish. Hamish is awesome. I talk to Hamish a lot, get some advice, and you know, run things by. And I know you help a lot of our network. So just one more time, Hamish, while we've got you here, what's your best email address and phone number, just so people can write that down in case they want to get in touch?
Yep, I popped it on that little chat thingy. So it's Hamish at hamishturner.co.nz. And then there's 2 websites, but the www.rentrollbroker.co.nz, and there's also www.hamishturner.co.nz. I try to keep things nice and simple. You see my email address, my Skype, everything's Hamish Turner. So even the company name is on my domain. So,
what I'll do too, Hamish, again for everyone listening, is I'll put up that link to your training for next week, which I'll be getting in on as well. I think that'll be very interesting. And I do just implore you all, just feel free, talk to Hamish, reach out to him, and you know, use the knowledge that he has and within your team of associates as well, because I know I find it really valuable. So
I think I'm very, very much like Zach in terms of sharing information. I'm quite liberal with it, and so not your typical old school consultant that needs to get something. You know, we're very liberal with the information. We even have a free rent roll growth booklet that's got 45 tips on how to grow a rent roll. We give those away every time we talk to a new client. I send them, so if anybody emails me, I'll be able to shoot that to you today. There's like an ebook on that. So very, very liberal with the info. So yeah.
Oh, great plug there to get an email through to Hamish to get your growth tips booklet. And thank you again, Hamish, for today. I appreciate all your help you give myself and the network, and I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this and got some nuggets out of it. And thanks for joining us.
No worries. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.
Good day, guys. See ya.